Matthew Offord.
A pleasure it really is to follow the member for Caithness, Sutherland and Easter Ross. I hope to speak to the House today with one of my own experiences as well. On Sunday, I attended the funeral service at Bushey New Cemetery. The reason that this was so significant is because it was the first and only interment of victims of the Holocaust ever to take place in the United Kingdom. And I still feel it's remarkable that 70 years after the death camps were discovered, such a ceremony should take place. Now, the remains were originally given to the Imperial War Museum many years ago, and because they were never going to be put on display, and they were acknowledged by a pathologist to be the remains of 6 people, 5 adults and 1 child, it was decided that they should be buried, and that certainly was the appropriate decision. I have to pay tribute to the Imperial War Museum for their efforts in seeking a resting place for these people. I believe that such decisions are really outside most curators' experience, but having established that the remains did actually come from Jewish people at Auschwitz-Birkenau, they took action. The museum contacted the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum and the Chief Rabbi of the United Kingdom, and they collaborated and decided the remains should be interred at the cemetery at Bushey. As in any funeral, I wasn't actually invited, but I decided to attend because I have several Holocaust survivors in my constituency, and indeed the Holocaust Survivors Centre. But I arrived in plenty of time not knowing how many people would turn up. But as I travelled along the road, I realised that this was quite an important event. And unknown to me, but in attendance, was the Archbishop of Westminster, Israel's ambassador, our own Secretary of State, James Brokensar, Baron Pickles, and Lord Lieutenant Robert Vass as a representative of the Queen. In addition, I saw many hundreds of my own constituents, and I understand that over 1,200 people attended. But it was the address given by the Chief Rabbi, who happens to be my constituent, Ephraim Mervis, that moved many people to tears. I watched as several men carefully wiped their eyes when the Chief Rabbi spoke, personally to the infant amongst the 6. And he said, "Your childhood was robbed. You experienced such fear and dread that the ultimate wickedness saw your life taken. We don't know who you are, your name, if you are male or female, or the details of your family. But we do know you were Jewish. All of us here feel a strong connection to you." One of my constituents, whom I've previously spoken about in other debates, made an impact upon me again on that day. I often visit her to eat a homemade cake, and I like to ensure that she's doing okay. But I was proud when I saw her at the service on Sunday, witness her and other Holocaust survivors accompany the coffin to the grave. Ziggy Schipper, Harry Brybing, Renee Salt, and Agnes Grunwald Spear all placed their hand on the coffin's blue velvet covering as they walked to where the remains were buried in earth that was brought here from Israel. As prayers were said and the coffin lowered, people were invited to come forward to place earth in the grave. With such a large crowd, it did not take long for the space to be filled. But what struck me as I stood by the graveside was a number of people who held pictures and artefacts of relatives whom I presume were victims of the Holocaust. For them, the funeral was very real, and it cannot be said definitively whether the contents of that grave actually contained one of their relatives or not. So we should never know. In so many ways, these 6 people represented the millions who do not have a last resting place and whose families, friends and relatives cannot mourn them because they don't know what will happen to them. As I turned away, someone indicated a small bag of earth and that I should place it on the grave, which I did. We undertake many activities as members of Parliament, but this event was something completely different and something that I certainly won't forget. At the Barnet Holocaust Memorial Day over the years, we've heard many speakers from atrocities in Rwanda, Cambodia and other countries, in addition to many local people whose lives were directly and indirectly affected by the Holocaust. For me, the event has become more personal, particularly this year, as I have now direct contact not just with the survivors, but indeed now with the dead.